was a Friday night in Dallas, Texas, in late October of 2019. The weather had that first bite of autumn to it, the kind where you can see your breath faintly when you step outside. My coworkers had dragged me out after work to a nightclub downtown called the Electric Room. I wasn't much for clubs, but I had told myself all week that I'd try to be more social, and a couple of beers couldn't hurt. The place was crowded. The kind of crowded where the air feels thick with perfume, sweat, and the haze from the smoke machine hanging like low fog. The ceiling throbbed with bass, and the floor beneath my shoes vibrated in rhythm. I could barely hear my own voice when I leaned over the table to talk to my coworkers, but nobody cared about actual conversation anyway. People were there to drink, to dance, to forget their week. By around midnight, I felt the need to get away from the crush of bodies. My throat was dry, my head buzzing from the music and cheap beer. I excused myself to the bathroom, weaving past people grinding on the dance floor, squeezing between shoulders and elbows, until I pushed open the heavy door marked with a flickering neon, men. Inside it was a relief at first. Quieter, though the music still pulsed through the walls like a second heartbeat. The bathroom smelled faintly of bleach and stale piss, that mix you'll find in almost every bar restroom. The lighting was harsh, fluorescent, buzzing faintly overhead. A couple guys were at the urinals, one washing his hands, the sound of rushing water mixing with the muffled thud of bass from outside. That I made my way to the last stall at the far end and locked the door. I didn't even have to go immediately, I just sat down on the closed toilet lid, elbows resting on my knees, letting the music fade to a distant thrum. I could hear muffled laughter from the men at the sinks, then the creak of the bathroom door opening and closing as they left. After a few minutes, the room went still. That's when I heard it. A voice, low and whispery, coming from the stall next to me. At first, I assumed the guy was on his phone. The words were too soft to make out, just a faint murmur. But then, clear as anything, I heard, "Don't leave. Stay in here. He's waiting." I froze, sitting upright, my skin prickling. For a second, I thought maybe I'd imagined it, that it was some leftover echo of conversation from the club outside. But no. The whisper came again, this time slower, more deliberate. "Don't go back out there." I leaned forward, my ear almost pressing against the cold metal partition. "What?" I whispered, my voice cracking slightly. The stall next to me was silent. I stared at the thin gap beneath the divider, half expecting to see shoes. But there was nothing. "Who's there?" I tried again. My whisper felt loud in that bathroom, bouncing off tile and porcelain. Then came a sound that made my stomach clench, the distinct scrape of nails or something hard dragging along the inside of the stall wall. A long, slow scratch that ended with a sudden tap near my ear. I shot up from the toilet seat, heart pounding, and backed up until I was pressed against the stall door. My breath came in short bursts. I tried to look down again at the floor gap, but it was empty. No shoes, no shadow. Nothing. And then, violently, the stall on the other side of mine rattled. The door slammed as if someone had thrown their full weight into it, shaking the walls so hard I thought the latch on my stall would snap. "Hey!" I shouted, my voice trembling. "Who the hell's in here?" The banging stopped. Dead silence followed. I stood frozen for what felt like minutes. My head filled with the muffled thud of music through the walls and the faint buzz of the fluorescent light above me. Eventually, I gathered enough courage to unlock the stall and step out. The bathroom was empty. Every stall door was wide open. I washed my hands, forcing myself not to look in the mirror for too long, not to linger in that strange silence. My pulse still raced, but I told myself it had to be a prank. Maybe some drunk guy messing with me, slipping out while I wasn't paying attention. That had to be it. When I finally pushed open the bathroom door, the sound hit me like a wall. The music, the shouting, the clinking of glasses. But something was different. A cluster of people had gathered on the dance floor, their faces pale in the flickering strobe lights. I stepped closer, drawn in by the buzz of panic. People were shouting, some screaming. In the center of the floor, a man lay sprawled on his back, blood pooling beneath him. A jagged wound spread across his chest where he'd been stabbed. Security swarmed, people shoved past me, and the music cut off mid-beat. The entire club shifted from euphoria to chaos in seconds. I stumbled back toward my coworkers, my mind replaying the words I'd heard in that bathroom. "Don't leave. Stay in here. He's waiting." I never saw who did it. The police came, took statements, shut the place down. They never found the suspect. But I know this, if I had left the bathroom just a few minutes earlier, I would have walked right into that exact spot on the dance floor, exactly when the knife came out. And the worst part, when I got home that night, shaken and exhausted, I threw my clothes in a heap on the floor and collapsed on my bed. Sometime after 3 a.m., I woke up to the faint sound of whispering in my apartment. The same breathy voice, drifting through the darkness from somewhere near my bathroom. In 2017, my best friend Rachel turned 24. We had been inseparable since college, the kind of friends who finished each other's sentences and laughed at the same stupid inside jokes. For her birthday, we decided to go out in Chicago. It was early March, that awkward time when winter hasn't fully given up but spring is starting to push through. The air was damp, the sidewalks still slick with patches of old snow, and the city lights reflected against puddles in the cracked pavement. That we picked a club near River North, one of those places that felt like it had seen better days. The neon sign outside flickered in weak red light, and the bass from inside thumped so loud you could feel it in your chest before you even walked through the door. It was one of those nights where everything felt lighthearted and reckless. We drank too much too fast, posed for selfies, and danced until the sweat made my hair stick to my neck. Rachel was glowing, laughing in that unrestrained way that drew people to her. She had this easy confidence, the kind that made everyone else in the room notice her. I wasn't jealous, I loved that about her. It was why I didn't panic when I realized around 2 in the morning that she wasn't right beside me anymore. I assumed she had gone to the bathroom or was talking to someone she'd met. That I did a quick lap around the place. The bathroom line snaked out into the hallway, and I checked each stall when I finally got inside. Empty. The smoking area was half frozen, a small group of people huddled together for warmth. No sign of her. I pushed my way outside where food trucks lined the curb, the greasy smell of tacos and hot dogs cutting through the cold air. Still nothing. By then her phone was going straight to voicemail. I told myself the battery had died. She was the type to live recklessly but not the type to just leave without telling me. By 3, the alcohol buzz had faded into that sharp edge of anxiety where every minute feels too long. I started pacing by the entrance, asking random strangers if they'd seen her. Nobody had. At 4, the lights came up inside the club. The music cut out and security started ushering people out. I stood outside, clutching my phone, calling her over and over again until my thumb hurt. I remember how quiet it was once the last of the crowd had wandered off, just the distant sound of a car horn and the hum of a streetlight buzzing overhead. That's when I noticed him. Across the street, under the shadow of a boarded-up storefront, a man in a dark hoodie was standing completely still. He wasn't smoking, wasn't scrolling on his phone, wasn't doing anything except watching. His hood was pulled low, but I could tell his face was turned toward me. I froze, the way you do when you're not sure if something is dangerous or if you're just imagining it. A taxi pulled up to the curb, breaking my line of sight. When it drove away a few seconds later, the man was gone. I didn't see Rachel again that night. I stayed outside until nearly 5 in the morning, then finally called a cab home. Every part of me felt wrong, heavy with guilt, but I kept telling myself she'd text me in the morning with some stupid story about leaving with friends or crashing at someone's apartment. She didn't. Her family reported her missing later that day. The police questioned me and I told them everything. They looked at me like they'd heard it all before. Young woman, club, drinking, probably went off with someone. But Rachel wasn't like that. At least I didn't think she was. Weeks passed. Her face was suddenly everywhere. On missing posters stapled to telephone poles, on the local news with her graduation photo framed by a banner that said missing in bold black letters. I was interviewed again and again, but I had nothing new to tell them. Just the same story. Just the same gnawing guilt that I'd let her out of my sight. The police eventually told her family they had a lead. Someone claimed to have seen her leaving the club with a man in a dark hoodie. That was all they would tell us. No description, no security footage. Just a man in a hoodie. I started seeing him everywhere after that. Not Rachel, him. Walking home from work one night, I swore I saw the same figure standing by the mouth of an alley, hood up, watching. Another time, while riding the train, I caught a reflection in the window across from me, a man in a hoodie sitting 3 rows back. When I turned, the seat was empty. I told myself it was stress, paranoia, trauma playing tricks on me. But one night in May, I woke up around 2 in the morning to the sound of my phone vibrating on the nightstand. An unknown number. I answered without thinking, my voice shaking. On the other end was silence. Not just silence, breathing. Slow, steady, male breathing. I whispered, "Hello." The line went dead. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The last time I ever got a call from that number was 2 weeks later. Again the same breathing. But this time there was something else. A faint sound in the background. Music. Faint, muffled bass like it was coming through walls. The same rhythm I remembered from the club that I haven't heard from that number since. Rachel has never been found. No body, no evidence, nothing. Just a girl who disappeared into a Chicago night, and a shadow of a man who still shows up sometimes, across the street in a window reflection in the corner of my eye when I'm walking home late. The police don't believe me. My therapist says I'm projecting guilt. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm imagining him. But I know what I saw that night outside the club, and sometimes when I'm drifting off to sleep I swear I hear it again, the faint thump of bass through the floorboards and the sound of someone breathing slow and steady just outside my door. It was late October, one of those damp Portland nights when the drizzle never fully stops and the sidewalks gleam under the glow of the street lamps. I was 21, a junior in college, and a few friends had dragged me out to a nightclub that had been buzzing around campus that month. It was called the Ember Room, tucked into an older brick building downtown. The place had this gritty reputation, half dive bar, half dance club, and while I wasn't much of a club goer, I went along because everyone else was excited. The night started off the way you'd expect. Bass thumping through the walls, bodies packed tight on the dance floor, neon lights flickering against the haze of the fog machines. My friends disappeared quickly into the crowd, laughing, ordering drinks, pulling strangers to dance. I hung back, not really in the mood, nursing a cheap beer near the wall and telling myself I'd loosen up once I had a couple more drinks. After maybe half an hour, I realized I hadn't seen any of them. I tried texting, but service inside was unreliable and nobody responded. I figured I'd go look upstairs. I'd seen people going up and down a narrow staircase near the back of the club. The bouncer at the door hadn't mentioned a second floor, but curiosity won. The stairs creaked under my feet as I climbed. The noise from downstairs dulled with each step until it was only a muffled throb, replaced by a low hum of fluorescent lights. The second floor was different, quieter, dim, with red bulbs casting a sickly glow along a hallway lined with heavy wooden doors. The carpet underfoot was damp, which made no sense to me, and the air smelled faintly of mold and something metallic, like rusted pipes that I called out for my friends half-heartedly, my voice sounding thin against the closed doors. None of them opened, but about halfway down the hallway, I noticed one door was cracked open just enough to show a sliver of darkness inside. I could swear I saw movement, a quick shape slipping in. For a moment I thought it was Sarah, one of the girls we came with. She'd been wearing a red jacket, and the way the light bent, I thought I'd caught a glimpse of it that I hesitated, then stepped closer. "Sarah? Is that you?" No answer. The hallway seemed to press in on me, the silence after my voice fading making me more self-conscious than I expected. I pushed the door with my hand. It swung open slowly with a low groan, revealing nothing but pitch black. The music downstairs was a dull thud through the floorboards now, the only other sound a faint drip of water somewhere inside. It was colder, the kind of damp cold that crawls under your skin. I pulled out my phone, swiping the flashlight on, and stepped inside. The beam cut through dust motes in the air, catching glimpses of cracked plaster walls and exposed pipes. The room was small, square, and empty, at least at first glance. Before I could take another step, the door slammed behind me with a force that rattled the frame. My heart jumped. I spun around, grabbing the handle instinctively, but when I twisted it, it didn't budge. "What?" From the outside. "Hey. Hello," I shouted, pounding against it with my palm. My voice bounced back hollow from the walls. I tried kicking, shoulder checking, but nothing gave. Panic started to creep in. The flashlight trembled in my grip as I turned back to the room. It wasn't just empty after all. In the far corner, just outside the strongest edge of my light, there was something. At first I thought it was a bundle of rags, but the longer I stared, the more it looked like a shape. Slouched. Upright. A person sitting perfectly still that I froze, my breath catching. "Hey," I said, my voice breaking. "Is someone there?" The shape didn't move. The silence stretched until the pounding of my pulse in my ears was louder than the muffled music below. I raised the light higher, the beam landing fully on it, and it was gone. Just a corner, cracked wall, nothing there. That I stumbled back, confused. My phone slipped in my sweaty grip, nearly falling. The drip 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 of water seemed louder now, echoing strangely as though the walls were hollow. I tried the door again, jiggling the handle furiously, but it held tight. That's when I heard it. A slow, deliberate breath. Not mine. Not even close. It came from the left side of the room, just out of the light's reach. A long inhale, then a ragged exhale, as if someone hadn't breathed fresh air in a long time. I swung the light wildly. The beam shook across cracked plaster, exposed pipe, empty space. Nothing. But the breathing didn't stop. It shifted, circling low and close, though I couldn't see a damn thing. My throat went dry. "Who's in here?" I demanded, trying to sound firm, but my voice cracked again, betraying me. The answer came not in words but in sound. The door handle behind me rattled violently, jerking up and down like someone was trying to force it from the other side. I pressed myself against the far wall, light sweeping back and forth, my chest tightening as every instinct screamed to get out. The rattling stopped suddenly, leaving only silence and that steady, wet breathing. I thought I saw movement again in the far corner. A pale shape, tall and angular, just for an instant before it blinked out when the light caught it. My brain scrambled for explanations, drunk clubgoers messing with me, a trick of my eyes, anything rational, but none of it settled. My phone buzzed in my hand, nearly making me drop it. A text notification from Sarah. "Where are you?" I wanted to reply, but before I could, the phone flickered. The screen glitched, lines running across it, the flashlight stuttering on and off. The breathing grew louder, closer, until it felt like whoever, or whatever, it was stood inches from my face in the dark between flashes of light. I pounded on the door again, screaming for help, voice raw, but nothing answered. Not footsteps, not voices, just that slow exhale, hot enough that I swore I felt it brush across my cheek in the darkness. And then, nothing. The light steadied. The room was empty. Silent. I didn't trust it, but I tried the door again. This time the handle turned easily. The door swung open into the dim red-lit hallway as if it had never been locked. The music from downstairs came flooding back, a sick comfort. I bolted, nearly tripping over the damp carpet as I stumbled down the hall and barreled down the stairs. I pushed through the crowd, ignoring the confused looks, until I found Sarah and the others near the bar. They laughed when I tried to explain, assuming I just had too much to drink, but I hadn't touched more than one beer. I went back to the Ember Room once, weeks later, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. The staircase was still there, but when I climbed it, the second floor was nothing but a locked door at the top with a sign that read "Employees Only." No hallway, no row of doors, no red lights. Just a wall that shouldn't have been there. I asked the bartender about it, and he frowned like he didn't understand. "We don't use the upstairs," he said. "Hasn't been open in years." I never pushed it further. I don't know what happened that night or what was in that room with me. But sometimes when I lie awake at night, I remember the feeling of hot breath brushing against my cheek in the dark, and I wonder if it followed me out. It was a little after 2 in the morning when Maya stepped out of the club into the damp air of downtown Los Angeles. The night was still loud, the kind of hum the city never loses, distant bass rattling from other clubs, a constant shuffle of footsteps and voices, the hiss of car tires on wet asphalt. The rain had stopped an hour ago, leaving the sidewalks glossy under the orange haze of streetlights. She tugged her jacket tighter against her shoulders and pulled her phone from her bag to confirm her Uber. It said the driver was 6 minutes away. Her friends had wanted to stay behind, still caught up in the swirl of neon drinks and flashing lights, but Maya had reached that point of exhaustion where even the idea of one more song felt unbearable. She wanted her bed. She wanted quiet. She wanted out of the heat and noise of the club. So she had slipped away with a quick hug and promised to text when she got home. She was scrolling idly when a yellow taxi pulled up to the curb in front of her. It wasn't one of the rideshare cars you see now with stickers in their windows. It was an actual cab, the kind she hadn't used in years. The window rolled down and the driver leaned across the passenger seat. "You Maya?" His voice was gravelly, calm, like he was already sure of the answer. Maya froze. "Yeah," she said automatically before she caught herself. The man nodded, his face lit unevenly by the glow of the dashboard. He was older, maybe in his late 50s, with thinning hair and a pale, heavy face. "Got the call. Maya, last name, right?" He said it casually, like reading it off a list. Her heart kicked once in her chest. She hadn't told anyone her last name at the club. The Uber app had it, sure, but why would a random taxi driver know it? "I didn't call a cab," she said slowly. I ordered an Uber. The man gave a small shrug and tapped the meter that wasn't even on. Sometimes it reroutes to us when it's busy. Happens all the time. Don't worry, I'll get you home faster than one of those kids. Come on, it's late. Don't wait out here. She hesitated. Her Uber app still showed 6 minutes, the little car icon crawling closer. But there was something about the certainty in his tone, the way he had said her full name, that made her doubt herself. Maybe the system had changed. Maybe this was some overflow setup she hadn't heard of. She was tired, drunker than she realized, and standing alone on a wet sidewalk at 2 a.m. Against the little alarm bells going off in her head, she opened the back door and slid inside. The interior smelled faintly of cigarettes and something sweet, like air freshener trying to mask it. The vinyl seat stuck slightly to her legs. The driver didn't ask for her address. He just pulled away from the curb and merged into the thin traffic that at first. Maya watched the lights of the city pass by and tried to calm herself. He probably had her info through some legitimate system. She kept telling herself that. But a few minutes later, she realized he hadn't started the meter. It sat there blank, unlit. Shouldn't you? She began. I'll take care of it, he interrupted, his eyes on the road. His tone wasn't rude, just final. She sat back, clutching her phone. The city outside looked different from this angle. Instead of heading toward her apartment in Silver Lake, they were gliding deeper into side streets she didn't recognize. The shops and bars gave way to closed warehouses, graffiti-tagged walls, and stretches of empty road where the only sound was the tires on wet pavement. Her chest tightened. I think you're going the wrong way, she said carefully. The driver looked into the rearview mirror and smiled, just slightly. His teeth caught the glow of the streetlights. Don't worry. I know a shortcut. That smile was wrong. Too calm, too practiced. Her fingers dug into her phone. I'd rather you stick to the route, she said, her voice shaking despite how hard she tried to steady it. Just follow the GPS. He didn't answer. He just kept driving, turning onto another street lined with chain-link fences and darkened loading docks. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought he'd hear it. She opened her Uber app again, desperate to see the little icon of the driver she was actually supposed to meet, but it froze and spun uselessly, searching for a signal. Can you just pull over here? She tried. I'll get out. This time he did look at her, his eyes catching hers in the mirror. They were flat, expressionless, but his lips curved into that same small smile. We're almost there. Almost where? The streets grew quieter. Fewer cars, fewer lights. She felt like she was being pulled farther and farther from the city she knew. Every instinct screamed at her to get out, to move, to do something before it was too late. Her hand hovered over the door handle, but the car was going too fast to risk jumping out. She thought about dialing 911, but what if he saw the screen light up? Then her phone buzzed. A text from her real Uber driver. Hey, I'm outside the club. Where are you? Her throat closed. She stared at the message, the words blurring. This wasn't a mix-up. This wasn't some system reroute. She was in a stranger's car, a man who knew her name, who had pulled her off the street like he had been waiting. Stop the car, she said, her voice breaking. Stop right now or I'm calling the police. Silence. The car kept moving. She hit the lock button on her door. It didn't click. She tried again. Nothing. The child locks. Her stomach dropped. The driver's smile widened in the mirror. Phones don't work out here, he said softly. She did the only thing she could think of. She screamed. She screamed as loud as her lungs would allow, pounding her fists against the window, hoping anyone would hear. The sound echoed in the confined space, wild and desperate. The driver didn't flinch. He just kept driving. Then, without warning, he pulled the cab to a stop beneath an overpass, the streetlights above casting long shadows down the concrete walls. The engine idled, loud in the silence that he turned around slowly, his face pale and shining with sweat, his eyes locked on hers. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the steady tick of the engine and Maya's ragged breathing. You shouldn't have gotten in, he said finally, his voice quiet but sharp enough to cut through her panic, and then just as suddenly he unlocked the doors. The click echoed like a gunshot. Maya didn't think. She shoved the door open and stumbled out into the wet street, running blindly, her heels slipping on the pavement. She didn't look back until she reached the corner, her lungs burning, and when she did the cab was gone. Completely gone, like it had never been there. Her real Uber driver called twice, 3 times before she managed to answer, sobbing into the phone as she begged him to come find her. To this day, she doesn't know how the man knew her name. She doesn't know what he wanted, or what would have happened if she hadn't screamed, if he hadn't let her go. Sometimes she swears she still sees yellow cabs lurking on side streets, their headlights off, just waiting. And sometimes she wonders if the next girl he calls by name won't be as lucky. It was late September in Berlin, cool enough at night that the streets held that damp chill you feel in your clothes when you walk too far without a jacket. I had flown in the day before from Hamburg to visit a couple of friends who were part of the club scene there. Berlin has this reputation of being the capital of techno, and I'd heard countless stories about the clubs, the long lines, the impossible door policies. For people like me who weren't regulars, getting inside one of the bigger ones was supposed to be like winning a lottery. That Saturday night, my friend Lucas suggested we try Berghain. Even I knew the name. He didn't look too hopeful though. Most people don't get in, he said, shrugging into his leather jacket as we walked toward the S-Bahn. It was just past 11 p.m., cool and damp, the smell of rain and cigarette smoke thick in the air. The city seemed to buzz quietly, people spilling into the streets, voices echoing off the concrete walls of the station that we waited in line for nearly an hour. I could feel the nervousness as we got closer to the door, a heavy anticipation like being judged before you even speak. The bouncer barely glanced at me, but somehow I was waved through. Lucas wasn't so lucky. He gave me this half smile, half grimace and said, "I'll meet you back at the flat," before disappearing into the night. Inside, the sound hit me like a wall. The music wasn't just loud, it was physical, pounding through the floors, the walls, even the air. Lights strobed in long, mechanical bursts, catching faces in fragments, painting the whole space as something half real, half dreamlike. I bought a drink at the bar and wandered. The place was a maze, concrete staircases and long corridors that seemed to stretch farther than they should. At some point, I noticed a stairwell off to the side of one of the smaller rooms. Nobody else seemed to be using it. No lights above it, just a dim red glow bleeding down from the floor above. I thought maybe it led to another dance floor. Curiosity got the better of me. The deeper I went, the more the sound of the music faded. It was gradual, replaced by something else. An electrical hum, low and steady like the vibration of machinery behind a wall. The stairs ended at a landing with a single metal door, painted black and scuffed at the edges. When I pushed it open, I was hit with the smell of damp concrete and rust. The hallway stretched out longer than I expected, lined with doors on both sides. Industrial-looking, heavy metal, each with a thick lock and hinges that looked far too strong for anything normal. A weak strip of fluorescent light flickered overhead, buzzing in rhythm with that humming sound that I walked slowly, the soles of my shoes clicking softly on the floor. A few of the doors had marks on them, scratches, long and ragged, as though someone had dragged something sharp across the surface again and again. I stopped at one and pressed my palm against the cold metal. When I leaned closer, ear against the door, I swore I heard something inside. That it was faint but distinct. Breathing. Not steady, not calm. Shallow and ragged, the way someone might sound if they'd been crying for hours. I jerked back so hard I nearly fell. My throat felt tight, the drink I'd had sitting like a stone in my stomach. That I stood there for maybe a minute, trying to tell myself it was nothing, maybe just pipes or the hum of ventilation. But curiosity gnawed at me. I moved to another door farther down, one with gouges around the handle as if someone had tried to claw their way out. When I pressed my ear to this one, I didn't hear breathing. I heard something else, a whisper. Not words, not in any language I could place. Just the texture of it, the way it curled against the inside of the door like it wanted to slip through the cracks and into the hall with me. I backed away, heart pounding so hard it drowned out the faint hum. That was when I felt the hand on my arm. I spun, ready to swing, but it was a man in a black jacket, heavy-set, with the flat expression of someone used to being obeyed. A security guard, though he hadn't been anywhere near me when I came down the stairs. He didn't yell, didn't even look surprised. His grip was strong, unyielding. "You shouldn't be down here," he said. His voice was quiet, flat, and final. Before I could stammer an apology, he was pulling me back toward the stairwell. His grip never loosened even when I tried to twist out of it. We went up the stairs in silence, my mind racing. By the time we reached the main floor again, the music hit me like a flood, shaking me back into the present. The guard let go without a word and disappeared into the crowd as though he'd never been there at all. That I didn't last much longer that night. I ordered water at the bar just to steady myself and asked one of the bartenders if there was another dance floor below. He looked confused. Downstairs? He asked, his brow furrowing. The basement? I said, lowering my voice against the beat of the music. That he went pale in an instant, like the blood drained out of his face. He shook his head quickly. There is no basement here, he said, and turned to serve someone else. Before I could ask anything more, that I left shortly after, weaving my way out through the crowd and into the cool Berlin night. The air smelled cleaner outside, the music muffled behind concrete walls, but the sound that lingered in my head wasn't the music. It was that ragged breathing, pressed against the other side of a locked metal door. That I stayed awake until sunrise, every sound from the street making me flinch. I told Lucas about it the next day, but he just laughed, said I'd had too much to drink. Maybe he's right. Maybe the hum of the machinery, the shadows, and the atmosphere all got to me. But sometimes late at night I'll catch myself remembering the way those scratches looked on the doors, and the way the bartender's face drained when I mentioned the basement. And every so often, if I'm lying in bed too long with the city quiet around me, I swear I can still hear it. That shallow, uneven breathing just beyond the walls. It was the first weekend after midterms, a Friday night in Miami, late October. The air was humid, clinging to the skin the way it always does there, and even though the sun had gone down hours earlier, the sidewalk still radiated heat from the day. Sarah was 19, a sophomore at FIU, and her roommate, Maddie, had been begging her to go out. Sarah wasn't much of a club person, but Maddie insisted they needed to celebrate surviving midterms, and after enough pestering, Sarah finally gave in. The Uber dropped them off in front of a downtown nightclub just before midnight. The neon lights were flashing across the dark pavement, bass-heavy music already bleeding out onto the street. A line of people waited to get in, but Maddie had a friend who knew the bouncer, so they slipped inside without much trouble. The air hit Sarah immediately, a mix of perfume, sweat, and alcohol, all blended with the heavy thrum of music. The dance floor pulsed with moving bodies, strobe lights flickering across the crowd in bursts of color. Sarah wasn't a drinker. Her parents were strict growing up, and she still carried that cautious voice in her head. But Maddie pressed a glass into her hand, something sweet that smelled faintly of pineapple and rum. Just one, Maddie shouted over the music, grinning. Live a little. Sarah hesitated, then took a sip. The drink was strong, but it went down smooth enough. She only remembers finishing about half of it. Within minutes, her head felt strangely heavy, the floor beneath her shifting in ways it shouldn't. The lights blurred and she blinked hard, trying to clear her vision. I need to sit, she said to Maddie, her words slurring more than they should have from just one drink. But when she turned, Maddie wasn't there. One moment she had been dancing near the bar, laughing at something a guy said, and the next she was gone, swallowed by the crowd. Sarah clutched the edge of the bar, her knees wobbling. She tried to pull her phone from her purse to text Maddie, but her fingers felt clumsy, almost numb. She pressed herself into a corner near a high table, hoping to steady herself, but her vision swam harder. Shapes of people moved around her, laughing, shouting, their voices warped and distant, as though she was underwater. Someone brushed against her arm and she jerked away, unsteadied. That's the last clear moment she remembers from the club. When her eyes opened again, she was staring at a white ceiling she didn't recognize. For a second, she thought she was back in her dorm, that maybe Maddie had gotten her home somehow. But the couch beneath her was unfamiliar, the fabric scratchy against her bare legs. The air smelled faintly of cologne and cleaning products. Panic shot through her chest. She sat up too quickly, her head pounding, and realized there was a man standing over her. That he looked to be in his late 20s, maybe early 30s. Tall, thin, with close-cropped hair and a clean-shaven face. He smiled when he saw her sit up, a small, almost rehearsed smile. Hey, he said softly, as if speaking to a child. You passed out at the club. I brought you here so you'd be safe. Sarah's voice cracked. Where's Maddie? He tilted his head. You were alone when I found you. Everyone else had left you. Her mouth was dry and her throat felt raw. She tried to swallow. My phone, she said, fumbling for her purse, but it wasn't anywhere in sight. Where's my phone? I don't have it, he said quickly, a little too quickly. Maybe you dropped it at the club. Don't worry, I'll help you look for it tomorrow. Every alarm in her body went off at once. Her shoes were gone, her purse was missing, and the way he was standing between her and the door made her heart hammer so hard she thought she'd be sick. He kept his tone calm, almost soothing, but there was something in his eyes she didn't trust. I need water, she whispered, forcing herself to stand. Her legs shook beneath her, but she kept moving. He hesitated, then nodded toward a small kitchen area. Sure, I'll get it for you. The moment he turned, she bolted. She didn't think, she just moved, her bare feet slapping against the hardwood floor, her hand fumbling at the front door until it gave way. She threw it open and ran. The cool night air hit her lungs like ice. She sprinted down a narrow flight of steps and onto a quiet street lined with parked cars. The pavement cut into her feet, but she didn't stop. She didn't look back. She must have run for blocks before she spotted a gas station glowing under harsh fluorescent lights. She stumbled inside, the attendant looking up in shock as she slammed her hands onto the counter, gasping out words between sobs. Help, please, I don't know where I am. The police came quickly. They drove her back to the apartment she had fled from, a dull beige building in a part of Miami she didn't recognize. They knocked, and the man answered calmly as if he'd been expecting them. He explained everything in a steady, polite voice. He had found her outside the club, barely conscious, and didn't know who else to call. He said she had agreed to come with him so she wouldn't be left alone. When Sarah tried to argue, her words stumbled out, and she realized how little she could actually remember. The gaps in her memory yawned wide and dark. They searched his apartment. No drugs, no weapons, nothing out of place. Just a neat, tidy living space that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. Her purse wasn't there. Neither was her phone. He insisted he had never seen them. The officers exchanged glances but didn't press further. Without evidence, without a clear memory, what could they do? They offered to drive Sarah home. She hasn't told her parents. She barely talks about it at all because every time she tries, she's met with the same questions she doesn't have answers to. Why did she go with him? Why can't she remember what happened between the club and that couch? Did she actually drink more than she thought? Was Maddie really gone, or did she just leave without noticing? Sarah still wakes up some nights with her heart racing. The image of that man standing over her burned into her mind. His voice, calm and patient, echoing, "I saved you." She never saw him again. The police never called her back with updates. But last week, while scrolling through Instagram, she froze on a photo one of her classmates had posted from another party. In the background, barely visible in the crowd, she could swear she saw him. That same face, that same practiced smile, watching. She doesn't know if it's her memory playing tricks on her, or if he's still out there, following her, waiting. All she knows is that she only had one drink. And whatever happened after, she will never remember. My name's Tom, and this happened in New Orleans a few years back during Mardi Gras. If you've ever been there during that time, you know what it's like. Chaotic, overwhelming, almost unreal. I was 28 then, living in Baton Rouge, and a few friends and I had decided to make a weekend of it. We got into the city on a Friday evening, and by Saturday night, we were knee-deep in the madness. The floats, the music, the smell of booze and sweat clinging to the air. It was humid even for February, and the streets were crowded to the point that moving felt like being carried by the current of bodies around you. Around 11 p.m., after hours of bar hopping and parades, I needed a break. The sound outside was deafening, and I just wanted somewhere to sit down for a bit. We were near Bourbon Street, which was packed wall to wall, when I spotted a nightclub tucked between two neon-lit bars. I don't even remember the name of the place. I just remember its black awning and a guy outside smoking who waved me in like he knew me. Inside it was dark and loud, but compared to the street, it almost felt calmer. My friends stayed outside, saying they'd catch up later, so I went in alone. I ordered a drink, found a spot near the back, and just let the night settle around me. The club smelled of cheap liquor and cologne, and the bass from the music rattled the floor under my shoes. I remember leaning against the wall, feeling the condensation of a drink drip down my hand, thinking how nice it was to just be out of the chaos for a while. I must have been there for a couple of hours. Time blurs when you're drinking and surrounded by flashing lights. At some point, I realized it was after 1 a.m., and I figured I should find my friends before they wandered too far. The front entrance was packed, a line of people pushing in and out. I didn't want to fight through the crowd, so I thought maybe I'd find a side door, a shortcut into one of the back alleys that run behind most of those buildings. That's when I noticed a hallway near the restrooms. It wasn't lit like the rest of the club, dim with a single yellow bulb humming overhead. People weren't using it, and I remember thinking it might lead to a quieter exit. I finished my drink, tossed the cup into a trash bin, and slipped down the hallway. At the end was a plain metal door, no sign, no glowing exit letters above it like you'd expect. It wasn't locked. I pressed it open, expecting the humid night air and the stink of dumpsters in an alley. Instead, I stepped into blackness. At first I thought the lights outside were out, or that it was maybe a service hallway with no bulbs. But as the door shut behind me, all the sound from the club, music, laughter, even the muffled bass, vanished. It was silent in a way that made my ears ring. I blinked, waiting for my eyes to adjust, and saw that I wasn't outside at all. I was standing in a long corridor, concrete floor, concrete walls, stretching ahead in both directions. I looked back for the door, but the wall was seamless. No handle, no frame, just blank concrete. I actually laughed under my breath, thinking maybe I'd wandered into some maintenance area, or that it was some weird architectural quirk of an old building. Still, my stomach tightened. Something felt wrong, though I couldn't place it. I took a few steps forward. My footsteps echoed, sharp against the walls, bouncing back louder than they should have. The air was cold and smelled faintly of damp stone. I tried pulling out my phone to use the flashlight, but when I checked my pocket, it wasn't there. I swore under my breath, thinking I'd left it at the bar, though I was sure I'd had it when I walked in. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. At first I thought it was just my own echo playing tricks, but these weren't in rhythm with mine. They came after, slow and deliberate, like someone was matching my pace but a beat behind. My chest tightened and I turned quickly, but the corridor behind me was empty. The darkness stretched endlessly both ways. Hello? My voice cracked more than I'd like to admit. It carried down the hall and faded without an answer. I started walking faster, my sneakers scraping the floor. The footsteps followed. Not rushing, not trying to catch me, but keeping pace. Whoever it was wanted me to know they were there. I spun again, heart hammering, but saw nothing. Just that endless gray corridor swallowing itself into shadow. By then, panic was setting in. I jogged, then ran. The sound of my steps thundered around me, but so did the other ones, always just behind. I couldn't shake the feeling of someone breathing at the back of my neck, the faint warmth of it even though the air was cold. I reached out to the wall, thinking I could find a doorway, a crack, anything, but the surface was smooth, featureless concrete. Minutes passed, maybe longer. My lungs burned, my throat felt raw. I stopped and pressed my hands to my knees, gasping. The footsteps stopped too. Silence pressed in, heavier than before. That's when I heard it, breathing. Not echoing, not distant. Right behind me. I froze. Every hair on my arm stood up. I could hear the wet rasp of someone inhaling, steady, patient, inches away. My stomach lurched. I wanted to turn around, but my body wouldn't let me. It was the most primal kind of fear, like prey realizing the predator is already at its throat. Then I felt it. A touch. Cold fingers brushing lightly against the back of my shoulder. That broke me. I screamed and bolted forward, sprinting harder than I ever have in my life. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I just ran, hoping to find anything. An exit, a door, a window, even a crack in the wall. The air grew colder with every step, my breath coming out in clouds. My vision blurred, whether from tears or exhaustion, I don't know. The last thing I remember is collapsing. My legs gave out, my face hit the concrete hard enough to split my lip. Everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying in a gutter 2 blocks from the club. My clothes were damp as if I'd been dragged through water. My phone was gone. My wallet was still in my pocket, but the cash was missing. My friends had been calling me for hours, and when I staggered to them, they said I looked pale, like I'd seen a ghost. I tried to explain, but the words sounded crazy even to me. The club? I went back in the daylight 2 days later, hoping to retrace my steps. There was no hallway near the restrooms, no unmarked door at the back. Just a solid wall. I asked the bartender about it, and he shook his head, saying they'd never had a back exit there. I don't know what happened to me that night. Maybe it was some kind of hallucination brought on by alcohol and exhaustion. Maybe someone laced my drink. That's what I told myself for a while. But sometimes when I'm walking alone late at night, I hear it again, that same sound. Footsteps. Always a beat behind mine.